Hi, my name is Holly, and every month I do a digital discussion on behalf of Edison Ford Winter Estates. And this month you can see me. I'm in front of Connie Mack, Thomas Edison, and Ty Cobb. And they're at Terry Park here in Fort Myers. And I'm going to tell you the story of Thomas Edison and baseball. At Terry Park, and there's Thomas Edison, Connie Mack, and Ty Cobb. And this is entitled Digital Discussion, The Love of the Game, Thomas Edison and Baseball. So thank you for joining me. Edison's connection to baseball, it starts with one of his early movies. I don't know if you knew Edison was in the movie business briefly. The Great Train Robbery is one of his better known films, but this is the first baseball game that was ever filmed. And it was photographed from one camera position behind home plate. It shows a baseball game in progress. The Reading pitcher has just let a Newark, this is New Jersey, batter walk to first. He's getting ready to head for second base. The next batter up cracks the first ball, pitch for a two-bagger, gets two bases, and races for the base with a burst of speed. The first baseman just misses a put out. A man coaching yells, the umpire runs up to make a decision, and a small boy runs behind the catcher. It doesn't look that clear when you're watching it, though, but realize this is from 1898. And it's close to the stands where there's a great commotion. So let's watch this. I think it's 28 seconds. There's no sound. Can you imagine anybody watching this today? And I believe that runner is supposed to be, or one of the people here is supposed to be the cowboy author, Zane Grey. And I'm going to be grateful every day from now on for when I watch baseball that it's clearer than this. And that was called The Ball Game. So that was one of his connections. He filmed an early ball game. But he also did some other things. In Brooklyn, the Edison Field was the home of the Ampere, AC, and semi-pro teams, the Edisons and Voltas in 1907. Edison sponsored these company teams, and there's a picture of him throwing out a ball. There's a picture of him with the team. You can see it says something like Edison on them, and that's from the 1920s. What's some other connections for him? The Edison Portland Cement Company provided the concrete for the original 1923 New York Yankees baseball stadium in the Bronx, New York City. And it was a concrete described as so hard and durable, said sports writer Tom Verducci, who now calls games or is color commentator during some of these World Series games, in a Sports Illustrated article, that New York City decided not to touch it during the 1973 to 1974 renovation. It was the home of the New York Yankees from 1923 to 2008. It was renovated in 1974 and 1975 and hosted 6,581 regular season home games. The house that Ruth built was actually built by Edison. Production on the ballpark took just 284 days from start to finish. Trust me, it would take a lot longer today. It used 45,000 barrels of cement, 30,000 cubic yards of gravel, 15,000 cubic yards of sand, 500 laborers with a total of 35,000 cubic yards of concrete. And so there is the stadium. And I will confess that I am a Red Sox fan. I think if you follow baseball, you know what that means. But I really was sad when that got torn down and we didn't even have a little piece of it to keep. Because number one, I think old ballparks are more interesting, even though they're quirky at times. And it was at Edison Portland Cement. So I'm sad that we don't have a piece of it to display. Here's another connection to baseball, and then we'll get into the stuff about Fort Myers. I don't know if any of you recognize this gentleman. This was our president. This is Ronald Reagan. Early in his career, remember, he started out as an actor. So even before then Ronald Reagan was a sports announcer primarily and recreated baseball games to broadcast on the radio from reports telegraphed via Edison Universal Stock Ticker. And he never once attended the game. So he had to read it off a stock ticker and make it sound interesting. which I would think it would be a challenge. But here is how Thomas Edison got his interest, I believe, how he got his interest in baseball. A man named Richard Q. Richards, who owned the Royal Palm Pharmacy, really wanted to have a baseball team in here in Fort Myers. And he wrote to every team. And in 1923, he went to Philadelphia and he's talking to Connie Mack. He would like to have him bring the athletics here. And I convinced Connie Mack to bring the athletics to Fort Myers, but it wasn't that easy. It didn't happen quite like that. Connie Mack said, "Oh, I'm in Montgomery. I'm happy there." They were in Montgomery, Alabama. They had been kind of vagabonds going from place to place, but there was really nobody nearby, maybe one team within, somewhat of a distance, but there would be a lot more people in Florida to play. So he leaves Richard Q. Richards thinking that he's not going to come. And then one day he shows up, I think it's December 1923, he shows up in the Royal Palm Pharmacy. And Richard Richards gives him a tour. Now, Terry Park was not Terry Park then. It was the old fairgrounds that had actually been started as a country club. But the people that owned it, they were Thomas Edison's neighbors. In fact, they used to live in the house next to him. The McGregors, Judy McGregor had remarried. Her husband had died. And she and Dr. Terry, eventually he will donate it. They donated the clubhouse, and then he will donate the rest of the grounds because Mrs. McGregor, Terry, had passed away. And so they gave them this. And that's where they would hold the county fair. But Richard Q. Richards thought it would be a great spot for a ballpark. And Connie Mack, just looking at it, it was pretty rough. It was designed for fairs. It wasn't designed for baseball playing. But he could see the potential and he was excited. And he had to make sure that there were enough hotels. So there were, but not everyone was the same. Not all offered meals. But that's another story for another day. But anyway, they have an agreement. They have to get that team here. They're going to give them an incentive of $6,000. Richard Q. Richards at the time was the head of the Kiwanis, and then he was head of the Kiwanis. I don't know if it was called the planning committee or something like that. But nevertheless, this is what Richard Richards' dream was, because he believed if we had sports writers here, it would bring a lot of people here to Fort Myers. Now, every article I've ever read said there were 5 sports writers on the train. But when I read more in depth and pulled up some more news clippings, sometimes it says 10. But no matter what, 5 or 10, they were people here that were coming to sunny Fort Myers, and they were going to be watching the athletics at Terry Park. So they would have their practices there. They would play half their games there. And here's Terry Park today, and it's still in existence. It's going to be used well up into the 1988, I believe, when they wouldn't fix it up for the Kansas City Royals. But it's still been used for Roy Hobbs baseball, college baseball. One year we had a Korean team training over here. Edison Ford has a vintage baseball game there each year as well. And there's fields named after Connie Mack, George Brett, and Roberto Clemente. And there were numerous teams that played there: the Cleveland Indians, the Pittsburgh Pirates, Kansas City Royals, and of course, the team we're talking about in relation to Thomas Edison, the Philadelphia Athletics. Now, the Philadelphia Athletics were started in 1901 by Connie Mack. He had been a baseball player himself. And they were a big deal at the time. They were the American League team. So Philadelphia at one point had 2 teams. Well, they came here in 1925. They even get to borrow Babe Ruth for a game, and he doesn't do anything in the game, but people were still very excited. It's very different today. Well, Thomas Edison was interested in what was going on, so he's going to drive out to Terry Park, aka the old fairgrounds. And you can see here a picture. That's not from the Tampa Tribune. That's from our archives. But there's Thomas Edison at bat. There's Connie Mack, because he used to be a catcher in his playing days. And there's Kit Gleason, one of the coaches, pitching to Thomas Edison. And I'm just going to read you this article, which is from the Tampa Tribune. So Edison was a big deal at the time. Thomas Edison has juice, quote unquote, behind bat. Fort Myers, Florida, a baseball recruit by the name of Tom Edison, who is pretty well known in the field of electrical invention, but whose baseball talents were heretofore unexpected, broke into a big league company here today and finished his initial performance with a batting average of 500. Mr. Edison, who has made this city his winter home for 40 years, attended the Lee County Fair today and drifted over to the park of the field where the Philadelphia Athletics were playing. And I never knew he was actually there to attend the fair. I have never read that before either. I thought he just went to see them play on practice. Moving picture men prevailed upon him to take a hand in the game. And Edison was so popular that he would be followed around and he'd be on those little news clips. With Kit Gleason pitching and Connie Mack behind the bat, the electrical wizard took his place at the bag. He missed the first ball, but cut the second for a Texas leaguer, which floated just out of reach of Joe Hauser. Sign him, Connie, yelled the crowd as the smiling inventor handed the bat back to Bing Miller and shook hands with all the players. And I looked up what a Texas leaguer is because you don't hear about that much these days. And a Texas leaguer is a bloop that falls between the outfield and an infielder for a hit. Originally linked to Ollie Pickering, who was in the Texas League and hit 7 bloops in a game. So now you know. And this is an article about this same occurrence. Let's see if it's any different. The Orlando Sentinel, it said, sees a future for Thomas A. And I must have cut off the Edison. He's a promising lad, and I predict he will be heard from. Connie Mack, pilot, another way of saying manager of the Philadelphia Athletics, said today after the tryout, he gave Thomas Edison, a 79-year-old recruit, very tongue-in-cheek here, who obtained some prominence as an electrical wizard. Edison appeared at the Athletics training ground here yesterday and at the request of photographers went to bat with Mack catching and Kit Gleason pitching. After one wild swing, the 79-year-old young inventor slapped out a Texas leaguer, and you hear that term again. Edison is scheduled to try his hand batting again this afternoon, and the Philadelphia players are ready to give him another trial. And I didn't find another article that said that he showed up. Connie pointed out today that Edison is a local boy coming here for the first time 43 years ago at the tender age of 36. I think he probably was actually, let's see, that's 1885. I think he was 38. And I think in the other article, they spelled Myers wrong. They love to put that extra E in there, Meyers. And this is from the Austin, Texas. And this is an article about Edison and baseball. So I have to read this to you because I found it interesting. By Thomas Edison. Oh, here's the misspelling of Fort Myers. By Thomas Edison, world's greatest inventor. Fort Myers with an E. February 23rd, 1927. Baseball is the greatest of American games. Some say football, but it is my firm belief, and it shall always be, that baseball has no superior. He gets no argument from me. It would not surprise me in the least if baseball becomes a worldwide sport before many years pass. The boys of Europe and other countries have not been sufficiently educated to the game. In Japan, baseball is extremely popular. Very true. And don't be surprised if you could see the formation of a league among the various towns in the course of the next few years. A friend of mine who was visiting in Tokyo recently told me that one of the college games there were fully 15,000 spectators. So you can easily see the interest manifested by the yellow race. That's a very unfortunate term. I'm sorry. I have not attended very many big games, but I don't believe you can find a more ardent follower of baseball than myself, as a day seldom passes when I do not read the sporting pages of the newspapers. In this way, I keep close tabs on the two major leagues, and there was one time when I could name the players of every club in both leagues. My keenest interest for the last few years has been in the athletics. I had the pleasure of meeting Connie Mack and a number of the boys, and from what I can learn, there is no cleaner bunch of American manhood than there is on that team. The athletics have done lots, excuse me, for Fort Myers. This city couldn't buy the advertising they received through the baseball club. When I first came here, it was very dead with 2,000 or 3,000 crackers scattered about. Crackers are the real Southerners who have lived in this section all their life. Honestly, I didn't ever believe Fort Myers would be the city it is today. And you can give most of that credit to the Philadelphia Athletics, who have done wonders for my favorite winter town. As to Mac's chances for the flag this year, I predicted that they would win the championship last season, and my dope went wrong. So I'm going to keep my mouth closed on that subject at the present, though I believe Connie Mack has the greatest collection of stars ever assembled. Well, it won't be long before they do win a World Series. The addition of Ty Cobb, who used to be with the Tigers, Eddie Collins, who had been with them before and came back, Zach Wheat, I think was with the Brooklyn Dodgers, ought to help matters considerably. And Eddie Collins was a player and a coach. I have always said that Cobb was the greatest player that ever put on a spiked shoe, while Collins is without a doubt one of the most brilliant second basemen in the history of the game. Wheat, they tell me, is a mighty good outfielder. It's certainly wonderful to think of a man like Cobb running around the bases with the speed and dash of a youngster. If every youth who ever aspired to become a baseball player follows the career and life of Ty, they won't go wrong. He is an immaculate man, one of the cleanest livers the game has ever known. Had Cobb set the pace like most young ball players do, he would not be where he is today. Instead, he would have been finished many years ago, maybe gone and forgotten. There is nothing like clean living, and in order to accomplish all the great things, a man must go the right path. Let the youngsters of America picture Cobb in their minds when the evil moment arrives. There is no way out of it. All athletes must take the greatest care with their bodies. Do you think I would have been a success with my inventions had I followed the call of the fight life? Certainly not. And let the young men of this wonderful country take a tip from one who knows. Always follow the straight and narrow path. And I'll let you draw your own conclusions. And some of these terms are offensive and some are outdated. This was written in 1927. And here we are again. Now, Edison was a big admirer of Ty Cobb. There was a book written about him that really paints him with a pretty black brush. I mean, just not very flattering. I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. He had some faults for sure, but he also probably had a book written about him that was a little over the top. Read about him and draw your conclusions. And this is from the Evening Star, Washington, District of Columbia. Edison fells Cobb with a wicked drive, by the Associated Press. A vulnerable recruit named Tom Edison has made good with the Philadelphia Athletics. This is not the game practice he was at before. This is the following year. In his first time at bat, Edison, a local boy who has won some fame in the Invention League yesterday, wheeled the ball back at the pitcher with such vigor as to knock $75,000 worth of baseball talent flatter than the joke about youth being served. Yes, Cobb was making something like between 70 and 75 at the time, and he was pitching. And baseball was 2 words at the beginning. The pitcher was Ty Cobb, who had donned for the first time in 23 years of big league baseball a uniform other than that of the Detroit club. In celebration of the occasion, some 50 newspaper and moving picture photographers arranged a special party, and Edison was drafted from his rubber experiments to play one of the leading roles. While the cameraman deployed for the places in the sun, Connie Mack, acting as master of ceremonies, escorted the white-haired wizard to the bat, armed him with a hat borrowed from Zach Wheat, and instructed him as swinging at a ball as the grinning Cobb stood ready to pitch. The mighty Cobb came in halfway from the pitcher's box and tossed an easy one right in the inventor's wholehearted swing. He caught it squarely, and before the astonished Ty could lift a hand, the ball hit him on the shoulder and rolled him over in the dust. Fans yelled, "Sign him up," and cameras were turned frantically. "Think you'll be able to do that when you're 80? Edison asked Cobb. "I hope so," said Connie Mayak, asking for Cobb. "It will mean a lot of penance to us in the next 40 years. If Edison had gone in for baseball instead of electric lights, photographs, rubber, and such falderalls, he would have been a great free hitter. That is the deliberate judgment of Cobb, manager Mack, Kid Gleason, and Ira Thomas, a quartet whose views rank pretty high in the baseball circles." Now, I have read about this moment a lot, and different things are said at different times. And it said, when that question was asked by Edison, sometimes it says that Cobb answered him and said, "I sure hope so." This says Mac. But then again, I read several articles like this, and there they are again. And this is just a brief recap. "You'll be playing ball at 80, Edison tells famous Tyrus," which was his real name, Tyrus Cobb. "You'll be playing ball when you're 80 was the comment of Thomas Edison to Ty Cobb when the electrical wizard neglected work on his rubber plantation for an hour this morning to see the athletics and training at Terry Park. "I hope so," Connie Mack chimed in enthusiastically. So instead of it being, "Do you think you'll be playing like this when you're 80? It's, "You'll be playing ball at 80 to Ty Cobb." And Connie Mack says, "I hope so." So there's all kinds of versions of this story. Mr. Edison, after watching the athletics romp about, decided to let his eye and batted out a fast grounder with Ty Cobb acting as pitcher. And they put a picture of him in there with his Detroit cap, and he will play for 2 years for the Tigers. And he held Thomas not the Tigers, the Athletics, excuse me. He played many years for the Tigers. He held Edison in the highest of esteem. And just to mention, Cobb is going to be admitted to the Hall of Fame in 1936, Mack in 1937, but there is no ceremony. So it's all held at one time at the Baseball Hall of Fame. 36, 37, 38, and 39 all go in at the same time. And Connie Mack is admitted to the hall at that time. Is there a picture of him with Ty Cobb in it? No, because Cobb showed up late to that induction. One story says he snuck out of the hospital. He'd been in the hospital and he was late getting there. And for some reason, they didn't take another picture. Another says he was coming from California with his son, arrived late. But wouldn't you think they'd retake the picture? And here is one of my favorites. He invites the whole team to Seminole Lodge's home. This is on the porch. And over here, down here, is Mrs. Edison right there on the bottom right. There's Thomas Edison. And he is holding hands, I believe, with Mrs. Scheib, one of the original owner that owned it with Connie Mack was Scheib. When he died, his two sons took over. One of them managed the baseball team day to day, was like the president, general manager. And I believe that's whose hand he's holding, which is kind of unusual. Anyway, they come out to their Seminole Lodge, and Mr. Edison loves telling alligator stories. So eventually they divide up by men and women. And he tells alligator stories to the gentlemen. But eventually, at some point, the ladies or women must have returned because Mrs. Edison notices that he had given them each a Cuban cigar. And nobody smokes it. They all put it in their pocket. And come to find out, they wanted to keep it as a souvenir. So Mrs. Edison whispers, probably loudly, in Mr. Edison's ear, as he was rather hard of hearing. And he gets another round of cigars, and they all partake and smoke them and have a good time. And they were there for a couple hours. They get punch and cookies, which he makes a joke about because he said They didn't want punch and cookies. They wanted to have the alligator stories. So there they all are. Now, Thomas Edison was a huge deal, but so was Connie Mack once the athletics came here. So they started in 1925. And by the way, Richard Q. Richards, I forgot to tell you, made Royal Palm Pharmacy the headquarters of the athletics. Things would be so different today, but they would hang out there. He even helped them financially once when the payroll hadn't shown up. They took money out of the cash register, and it says, tomorrow is Connie Mack Day, and everybody should go to this final game and give the old baseball warhorse a good send-off before he leaves with his Philadelphia Athletics. Connie has a great team, and here's wishing they cop the old rag and bring it back with them next year to exhibit at Terry Field. So they want them to win a World Series. And this is by Son Carson's Auto Laundry. So I'm guessing that's a car wash. All right. And every year they would have a Connie Mack Day and honor Connie Mack. So this says Connie Mack to be honored by the city tomorrow. Everything is set for the city of Fort Myers to pay homage to Connie Mack, astute manager of the athletics. Tomorrow, when the Mack men, and that's what they were called, will play their last game this spring on Terry Park Diamond before leaving on a barnstorming trip, which will land them in Philadelphia for the opening games of the American League. Tuesday has been officially designated as Connie Mack Day, and beginning with a mammoth parade at 11:45, the activities of the day will be bent toward honoring manager Mack. The leading merchants have all agreed to shop at 2 in the afternoon, when merchants and clerks will chew peanuts together and root for the athletics to win over the Boston Braves, who became the Milwaukee Braves, who became the Atlanta Braves, with their great Roger Hornsby in their lineup. Rogers, excuse me. The Fort Myers Public Schools will close at noon. Geez, I wish they would do this today. And all the school children would be admitted to the bleachers free of charge to feast their eyes on the baseball feats of Tyrus Cobb, Tris Speaker, who was only with them for 1 year, Lefty Grove, a great pitcher, Lefty, Rogers Hornsby, and a galaxy of famous diamond stars. The school children were invited to attend the game by Coach Ira Thomas, who spoke in the 2 high schools last week. The parade will form at 11 o'clock on Carson Street, facing the boulevard, and be ready to move at 11:45, proceeding into the business district, led by the guest of honor, Connie Mack, city and county officials, and the 2 ball clubs. Every civic organization is planning to have cars in the parade, and they are urged to form in line as one body before the start of the parade. The Braves, with their manager, Jack Slattery, veteran college coach, arrived at Fort Myers last evening by bus and will play the 3rd game of a 4-game series this afternoon. Both the Braves and the A's have 1 game to their credit, and today's fracas will break the tie. So they've each won 1 against each other. This is Slattery's first year in professional ball. On his club is Lance Richbaugh, former University of Florida pitcher who has made good in the majors. Mr. and Mrs. Thomas A. Edison, that's why I put this article in here, who holds a season ticket to a box in Terry Park Grandstand, are expected to attend tomorrow's ball game. Mrs. Edison has already attended several of the games, but Mr. Edison has been too busy with his rubber experiments to follow the athletics this year, though he is a fan. He definitely was a big fan, but I don't know if he ever saw another team other than the athletics in spring training. And then again, 1931. Fort Myers will turn out in force tomorrow to honor Connie Mack, tall tutor. He was also called the tall tactician. And he always dresses very formally in a suit with a rolled up scorecard in his hand. Of the Philadelphia Athletics, who closed their spring training season here Monday afternoon with an exhibition game against the Boston Braves. Ceremonies honoring the famous baseball leader, see, they had one every year, will be brief but impressive. There will be a short speech by Mayor Josiah Fitch, and Mr. Mack will be handed a little gift, a token of appreciation for Fort Myers. The ceremonies will be held just before the game starts. Thomas Edison probably will attend the ceremonies, and watch the A's in action. He has been formally invited to be present, and Mrs. Edison has also reserved a box for herself and 8 guests. And honestly, when you look at those, it looks like an orchestra seat, the box seats, the old-fashioned ones like you'd see on Lawrence Welk. Unless the weather interferes and causes postponement, tomorrow's game will wind up the local season for the Athletics, and they will depart Tuesday on their barnstorming trip for Philadelphia. And I believe this picture is from just maybe 36, 34, or 36, when the team wasn't as successful as it had been. And I put this in the wrong order, but no, I didn't. Here it is. It's correct. It was just the picture that was a little later. The Athletics wound up their 7th consecutive season in Fort Myers today. They will leave tonight for Orlando, where they play 2 exhibition games with Cincinnati. Blah, 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 blah. The Mac men got a perfect send-off yesterday in their last local game. Listen to this. This is my favorite Thomas Edison baseball story. Even Thomas A. Edison emerged from his seclusion long enough to visit Terry Park and watched the champions nose out the Boston Braves by a score of 3-2. The white-haired inventor did not arrive until the 3rd inning, and he was given an ovation by both the spectators and members of the teams. Connie will take a shining new Panama hat. He was noted for his hats with him when he leaves this evening as a memento of Fort Myers' good wishes for the coming campaign. He was presented the hat yesterday by Mayor Josiah H. Finch in a brief ceremony prior to the game. The Athletics will return next season, Mr. Mack assured the mayor, and he hopes to bring back another world championship with them. And I don't remember if I told you, nope, I did not. So I'm going to backspace for a minute. And here I'll tell you about the Athletics record. I mean, they keep on improving. And then in 1929, they win a World Series. 1930, they win the World Series. And this is called his second dynasty. His first dynasty was in like 11, 13, 14. They won some World Series and some pennants before they even had a World Series. And in 1931, they will go on and win the American League pennant. But they lose, and I believe it's to the Braves, which is probably the Braves' only win. And then after that, they had some semi-successful seasons, but they never really went to like a playoff game again. And when the Athletics signed a contract, they originally were supposed to be here for 10 years. They end up staying for 12 years. And though Edison brought a lot of people here, their baseball and Connie Mack brought a lot of people too. Now, Thomas Edison will die that same year, October 18th, 1931. Connie Mack lives until the mid-1950s. He has the longest winning record, the best winning record in baseball. Won more games than any other manager. And eventually the Mack family, some of them will come here and live here in the Fort Myers area, and we're very blessed to have them here. Now, I believe this was taken in about 1936, which will be the last year, no, 34, excuse me. 34, of course, because that's the last year that Henry Ford really comes to stay at his here in Fort Myers for any length of time. I believe Mrs. Ford comes for a very brief visit, or they rent out their home and eventually they will sell it. So this is in Terry Park. And I looked for all kinds of stories to see how they met each other and what happened. I'm assuming they met through Edison. So there's no, I just have seen the picture. Haven't found any story yet that tells about Henry Ford and Connie Mack. Though if you visit Greenfield Village, they certainly have old-time baseball games there in the summer. So there's 2 men that were very close friends with Thomas Edison. Well, let me see if anybody has any questions for me at all. I'm sorry about the confusion about the time. I do have a little more to share. We do these every month. We either do a digital discussion or step into history digital edition. And if you are interested and donating to keep this going. Here's our address: Edison Ford Winter Estates, 2350 McGregor Boulevard, Fort Myers, Florida, 33901. And if you ever want to email me with some questions or suggestions, it's Shaffer, SHAFFER, at EdisonFord.org. Here's some of my sources: Rutgers University, the newspapers.com. There's just a lot. And some from my brain, just because I've read so much about him. Now, there is a great exhibit here at Edison Ford Winter Estates, and it has a lot of items from the Matt family, McGillicuddy family, that are on loan to us, and focuses mostly on the athletics and Connie Mack, but it talks about our other teams that come later as well. There's a little display about that. And if you haven't been here to see it, I hope you will. What am I talking about next month? Well, I just got back from Gettysburg, and I will be speaking, I think it's the second Tuesday in November, on Lincoln at Gettysburg. I'm a great admirer of Lincoln, and I hope you'll join me for that. Well, I'm going to take one more look, but not seeing any questions. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next month. Thank you.